Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Archive 81, Season 1, Episode 2. So, in my own mind, I was coming up with, man, I hope this has a really original story, and it feels like there's something that doesn't feel like this is a copy and paste of a number of things. But then I go into this episode, I'm like, oh. Oh. Of course, we have this kind of theme going on. Of course, we have an episode that is to all of a sudden go and make me just feel deflated after the first episode of like, man, there's a lot of potential with this show, and then second episode happens. Where I'm just like, oh, this is this show. Alright, well, mystery solved, I guess. God. I was hoping there to be something unique about this, and the only really unique thing is now something that might just become a boring part of the show. Oh yeah, the uniqueness is eventually just gonna start to whatever was unique about this show is gonna slowly but surely start to just run out, and then it's just gonna kind of become like any other kind of show. So with that said, we end up finding out that Davenport is to seemingly, I guess, be working with possibly two different companies. Maybe he's a rich miser and he just owns a lot of that he just has for whatever weird reason. Because we find out that LMG is, of course, Legacy Management Global in this episode. But we also find out that Davenport is to also have another company lined up, and we find out that right out of the gate in this episode. So it seems that Dane is going on to quickly assess almost everything that we had already found out about in the whole first episode in one fell swoop of an episode. And I'm just like, man, they could have slowed to the crawl this up. They could have it just feels like everything that we know about the first episode, Dan knows about the first episode and the second episode. And I'm just like, man, you couldn't have there's some things that you could have trickled out, and I think that this show is probably going to eventually, slowly but surely, become a boring piece now. I was hoping for a slow build, but I don't think there's going to be that in this show. I think Dan should have been a little bit more naive, but no, right into the second episode, he's like, I figured it all out. I figured everything. I figured out all the clues. And I'm like, that sucks. it just deflates me and just sucks the life out of me, where there isn't a build to this show. It feels like we're just gonna the further and further on we go, there's gonna be nothing really left for them to do. I don't think that this show is going to get a second season. I think this is going to end up just being another one-off show, because I feel like they're doing things far too quickly, and they're giving up too much stuff far too quickly, where it might quickly lose people's interest. So, to where it's just man, we got all the answers in one show or one episode. Why do I need to watch all of the ones that are provided? Because, plus, this show is just not unique enough. I can go and watch 4 to 5 other things that feel familiar, or just feel more interesting. I can go and watch the movie Censor that I had seen once, that is a more interesting build-up of a story than this show. because it's like an interesting movie. Like I could go and watch like uh, broadcast broadcast signal intrusion, and there's a build up, a weird, goofy build up, but a build up nonetheless. So with that said, let's go out of our way to go into that double five time territory. Let's just go out of our way to say that it's about that time yet again to just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time. I'm going to spoil this episode. Um, yeah, just like as soon as we got to like the real bits of dialogue in the show, I'm like, oh my god, I'm just blah. Why? I feel like I'm gonna get bored watching this show now. It just blah out of me. Man, all right, let's go into this one. So the only cool thing is when he's going and fixing the tapes. That's the only cool thing now. Everything is just like, man, this show. All right, the drastic approaches that are now to make this show just a little bit more boring. So let's go on. So because we have it to where now Melody is to just not even have the camera at a good angle, and she's just taping every single thing. There isn't any editing being done. There isn't whatever. We just kind of have, I think, Melody already just kind of giving up on really doing some video project and is just going on and just having these random tapes of these whatever that like she probably just never went on and used. So she's now just wasting tape for the most of the point. Like it just feels like she's the girl from like Chronicles that just tapes everything regardless of it's like good or not. Because I thought this was some like little bit of information that she was using, but we just turn around and now have her just like, well, I have nothing better to do, so let's just tape everything. But I get it. It's like, well, you wouldn't be able to get that girl's story if she didn't. I get that, but still, it's just. Anyways, pushing on. Let's spoil this one. So, Dan, of course, is to run off and go and call Mark and tell him it's like, well, hey, I called you 6 times last night, and like Dan is kind of out of the complex and talking to Mark, and so Mark had some work thing to do, so like he thought that he probably went on and was to call Dan, but like he wasn't quite sure. So we have Dan going on and saying that his father was in the complex and he's not really sure why he was there. So Dan must have not have lived in that apartment complex, but for some reason Dan's father had burnt down in that apartment complex. So because that's what I'm assuming or assessing from this story. And we, of course, have it where Dan is saying, yeah, Davenport had chosen me for a reason because my father was on those tapes and he knew about it. But then Dan goes on and is to tell, or Davenport is to tell Dan later on, it's like, well, I don't know what's on those tapes, but I want you to be able to figure it out. I'm like, who is Dan reporting these tapes to? Who is he telling the progress of these tapes? It just feels like he's watching these things, and I guess someone else is watching him watch these tapes. So, who is Dan reporting to of these fightings? Nobody? Because it feels like Davenport is just telling him, hey, yeah, fix up these tapes and report back to me about this whole fire situation. And so who is Dan like reporting? Nobody. Like there isn't a paper he's filling out every single time he does one of these tapes. Uh, Maybe really he's just going on, and once he restores these, he passes them along, and then that person watches it also, whoever that person is, and just rewatches it, and it's like, oh, okay. Or again, maybe there's a camera that's just kind of on this TV, and they're both watching the same exact thing. I'm not quite sure. But so Dan is getting very suspicious about Davenport, and so Mark is just like, well, hey, pull the ripcord. Like, you can go and leave at any time. It's not like you're like prisoned here or whatever. Or you can go on and find the mystery of your father and solve this whole thing. And that might be the one reason why you're going on and doing this whole project. You know what? I'm honestly thinking, since Dan only really has Mark here, I think Mark is somehow connected to this thing. I think they're giving him a big fat check, and he's like, sure, I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. Because for the life of me, I'm probably thinking that Davenport probably owns Mark's podcast. Because Davenport, since he's rich anyways, he's probably just like, yeah, like I'm gonna control everything of this because we already have Davenport who is to hold all these cameras in this room. So I want to think that there's a lot more strings being had by people. So that way I can at least have some kind of thing here that I can be more interested by with this story. Like I can at least get some like aha kind of thing at the end of this. If really now we already know things so quickly. So Dan goes on is like, well, I guess I'll go and I'll do these tapes. Ugh. I'll do these tapes. I'll figure it out. I'll know the puzzle and the riddle and the rhyme and whatever. Because at the very beginning of this video, we see this advertisement for a company called Wellsprings, which we find out is actually Davenport's company within this episode. And so I'm like, okay, that feels like some. Like Wellspring sounds like a mental hospital to me, or like some kind of like medication ad, like Fabrizia. Like, would you love some Fabrizia? And because you'll feel a whole heck of a lot better. The side effects are constipation, death, murder, blindness, the inability to walk, and 500 different other side effects that I just don't want to name right now because it would take too long for this ad to just rattle off all the side effects. Yeah, like I don't know how many times there'd be this medication ad where they have like a billion different side effects. I'm like, I'm sorry, so if I want to cure that, like I have a risk of getting any billion of these other things. I don't think so. Yeah, no, not for me. So Dan is the oh, if I forgot about it, Dan was to go on and find that rat in that rat trap. He goes on and makes it his pet, and he puts it in some box of sorts. Which Dan in this episode is to go on and find that this rat is going on and making some weird, goofy nest uh, by kind of tearing up all this paper. So, but yeah, so Dan goes and takes another tape and is to go on and see what this next tape is to bring us. So we of course go on and have Melody, who's going and talking to Jess, going on to find out that Jess is to also be a person that is to be a person that has a camera also, and so they're going to some camera repair shop for Jess to fix her camera. And so I guess since we have like-minded people, they're going to be the best friends, right? So we have Melody asking Jess what was the one thing that Jess was trying to tell Jess, or what was the one thing that Melody was going to try to get out of Jess here, as Jess was trying to say something, but then she stopped herself because maybe she would have said any more, she would probably had some seizure or something. So Jess is like, yeah, I don't know, like so. In other words, like your brain is controlled by this building, and maybe we're gonna find out that all these people are robots. They're programmed by the weird religious statue, whatever that is. It's not a Buddha statue, but we'll figure out eventually what that name of that god is, and because I'm sure somebody on YouTube is to do a video right now explaining what that is. But it's another just statue that everybody's just away to, and I'm just like, oh my god, the show, the whole cult thing, just immediately just like I am just so sick of a cult show. I am so sick of this. I hate cult shows. I hate cult movies. God dang it, they have to just keep doing I'm so sick of it. I would much rather have any kind of show. I watch Hereditary, cult show. I watch a freaking or cult movie. I go into any number of things, and it's always like, oh, hey, here's another cult for you. I'm like, God, can we just do anything with the horror genre? The Wicker Man, it's a cult movie. Midsummer, probably a cult movie. I haven't yet to see it, but I'm sure that's what it is. This freaking cult film. Good grief! Can we do something original here? Can we do something different? Can we make people guess what really it is instead of just plopping it down right away within episode 2? So, Melody is to go with Jess to go on to meet some more neighbors that live in this house. Going on and having Melody meet with a girl, I believe her name is Cassandra, and I don't know, there's something about this woman that like kind of makes me uncomfortable with the way of which that she is to kind of hug on to Melody, and I'm just like, there's something just like not quite, and I can't put my finger on it, but I guess the finger is really that we just have this girl as this cultist girl, and maybe that's just the weirdness about her. Not quite sure yet. We'll figure it out. So, you know what I'm hoping at the end of this? Because we have these characters like screaming and yelling like they're animals. You know what I want them to do? I want them at some point to just lose their freaking mind and go on and hurt people in this apartment building. That's sad, but what else can we get in this story? Maybe that's the reason why this place burnt down, is because people turned into wild animals, so to speak. Because maybe they were hypnotized by somebody. Maybe that would be a more interesting story, to find out that there's some guy that is hypnotizing people. That would be a much more interesting story than what we're given. Still desperately writing the story for the show. So, but anyways, so we go on and we have Melody still meeting other people in this apartment building, because we don't really have Jessica, who's giving up her story quite yet. So Melody goes on and is to meet with a girl named Beatrice Reyes, and so she's a tarot card fortune teller woman, and so it feels like she might have some psychic ability of sorts, because immediately when Melody and Jess are to make their way to this apartment, it seems that Reyes is to immediately know what this girl is there for, unless this is just a very small apartment building complex, so maybe the word has gotten around. Because Jess knows probably a lot of people, and so, I don't know, word could possibly be getting around. So, we have it where Reyes is to want to give Melody a reading as if she wants it or not. Suck it! Suck it, freaking Melody. If you don't want a reading, you're gonna have to get a reading anyways, because, oh well. So, we go on, and we, of course, have Reyes here going and having 3 cards that are presenting her past, present, and future. And luckily, Scrooge isn't coming in here to wish everybody a Merry Christmas because, like, past, present, future, 3 ghosts. Anyways, pushing on. So, Reyes goes and tosses the 1 card and is to say her past, that I guess she's to have some great pain of her childhood. More than likely, the pain is stemming from Melody going and mentioning that she was adopted, and her journey is to go on and now find someone of her past. And so the present is that it seems that Melody's looking for somebody, and Melody used to mention Julia Bennett, who was a woman that she wanted to get back to, and so Reyes is like, okay, all right. So the future is to say that she has this death card. Like, nice Melody. So Reyes is like, well, don't think that death is like really like what that means, that you're gonna die soon. Like, maybe it's just kind of something that you're doing now, like you're going to change in the future. Or because, like, I know about like tarot cards and stuff like that, like I've read up on some of them, where like death doesn't always mean you're going to die. Death means that like maybe you're going to change, or something is going to change for you. It's not going to mean like, oh, you're definitely going to die soon. No, that's not always what the tarot cards are supposedly mean. So we go on, and so Reyes is mentioning that she has figured out what is going on into the basement, and she's to find it out that it's some sex club, of course, that she is to hear moaning, and she is to hear them humming away their sweet, sweet Dixie, or whatever they're humming down there. So Reyes is like, yeah, I hear them just sounding off and whatever. Like, so Melody's just like, okay, well, I guess we figured out what the heck that weird, goofy sound is. And so after Melody is done going and talking to Reyes, it seems that eventually we have Melody going and meeting up with a guy named Samuel, who we kind of quickly see in the very first episode here, where he's opening the door for, of course, Melody. But we see him again here, and he's like, oh, like, I see that you're like a person that's kind of like going from door to door, kind of getting everybody's story and so on and so forth. So, like, hey, like, do you happen to like listen to a certain kind of music, hopefully classical, because it seems like you go on and listen to certain kind of music. And Melody's like, well, no, like, I don't listen to classical music. I listen to headbanging and death metal, and that's not what she says, but it's a joke. So Samuel's like, well, hey, could you just please just come with me to this play that I'm dragging everybody and their brother to, desperately to support a friend of mine that is to do this play. And so Melody's like, okay, I'll go on with you because maybe I might get, like, this might be like a date or something like that where we immediately just have an attraction between one another. Because this guy is easy on the eyes and easy on the wallet, hopefully. So, and again, like, we have this all being recorded by Melody, so Dan is kind of seeing, like, maybe not the best version of whatever this is, but he's still seeing it nonetheless. So, Melody goes on to this play slash bar place, restaurant, something or other. And so Melody, of course, is bringing the camera so that way we can continue this whole story so it doesn't seem like there's some weird fabrication here of like, oh, they always have to justify Melody's story with the camcorder because we still have to go on with this. So I'm just waiting for there to be one tape that Melody is to have that that Dan is to like, oh, I need to know this tape. I need to know what happened. So, and I'm sure Dan at this point is like, dude, I don't want to be watching these tapes anymore. Melody, just like tell me what happened. Tell me in your own words the whole story, because I don't want to watch all these tapes. Like, they're not exciting enough for me. So, here's the goofy thing. Why didn't Davenport just do this in the first place? Find any number of people that were still alive from this apartment complex burning and ask them about what had happened. Especially if there's certain people that are still alive. That's what kind of bothered me about this episode. So, we also had at one point where Dan in this episode is to get the heebie-jeebies because he is to see a person that is kind of walking around in this complex, and so we have Dan trying to call Davenport, and there's an assistant of his who's saying, "Well, he's busy right now." I'm like, leave a message. Yeah. So Dan is to leave a message going and saying, like, well, is there anybody else that lives in this apartment complex? I'd have asked that, gee golly, day one, but again, like, now we have to ask that in episode 2, where I'm like, anyways. So, Dan never really gets an answer about that, because we just have to naturally assume that Dan is just being heavily stalked by marauders. I think it is the hooligans. No, it's probably just freaking Davenport, who is to see that there's a blind spot in his camera feed, so he's just gonna have some guy follow Dan around when Dan is just kind of outside the camera lens of this apartment complex. So I'm assuming there's some probably PI or something that's following Dan around, or maybe it's possibly someone else. Maybe it's maybe somebody else wanting to desperately get answers, and maybe it's like it's Melody. She's doing it. No, probably not. So, because why would it be that convenient where Melody is like, oh, like, whoops, so this guy is trying to get answers about me, well, I'm going to get answers about him. So, we also have at some point where Dan is to talk to Mark and mention that Dan is to find out through this recording that Melody had some prior connection to Dan's father, and that possibly Melody could have been a client of Dan's father. So we could really just get here that Melody could have some kind of light, even much more so than anyone else. Or maybe there's a whole reason why Steve was just to show up, or Steven was just to show up to help Melody here, probably simply because Steven was Melody's client, and so he thought that he was to supposedly do the right thing here by having, I don't know, just like that seems so weird. Why is Steven connecting to Melody and telling her to go away when he himself, I don't know, it's so confusing. Cause was so because I'm assuming maybe Melody wasn't in the Viscera apartment complex when she was going and talking to Steven and these other guys. Maybe she was in that hospital. Maybe she was in Wellsprings, running in there trying to get Jess to safety. And so maybe Steven was trying to prevent Melody, even though he had worked with her in the past, not going on and and like talking to her in a manner of them being familiar with one another for some goofy reason. I don't know. Like, it feels like there also just might be something here where they're trying to justify to Dan about certain things. I don't know. This is there's so much like what? I guess there's so much mystery to be still solved here, but like I'm trying to put the things together, but it feels like a jumbled mess of things. Where it's like, okay, like so was Melody a patient with Steven after the fact? What the fuck? Like, what is the answer to this? I need to know by watching other episodes. I need to figure this out. Maybe. Like, I desperately need to know. Sorta. I don't know. Well, like, I think the more and more that I pull away at this onion, the less satisfied I'm probably going to be. Sadly. So let's go on. So, Dan is getting tapes, supposedly from Steven's confidential files, and Dan is telling Mark, who's getting these confidential files from Steven's Steven's stuff. Dan is telling Mark to not go on and try to like watch any or listen to any of these things because like there's a reason why they call them confidential. But then why does Dan get to watch like listen to them? That seems kind of bullshit. Like, but anyways, so but then we end up finding also out at the tail end of this episode that Melody is still alive and she's living in Pittsburgh, and Dan should go and try to find her and go on and get answers from her. Like if we weren't already like confused about some parts of the show. So let's get back to Melody. So Melody goes on, and she of course is at this weird play, and she of course is listening to this music, and it feels like she is to start to get maybe sick, or maybe she's starting to feel something else possibly from this music, and so she is to just kind of like feel like kind of like a little sick. We also have this kind of like flashing back and forth. So for people who probably easily get seizures, I don't know. So epilepsy and whatever, flashing lights and whatever. But yeah, so Samuel goes on and tries to do the nice thing and tells like now tells, of course, Melody, like, let's go into another room. Maybe we'll just get out of here because it feels like this music isn't really agreeing with you. So I'll go on and I'll be like let's just kind of get out of here. Like we spent enough time together, so to speak, so you can go on home. So it seems that Melody and Samuel are going and kissing, and then Melody is to make her way into an apartment building to have Annabelle appear there. And I guess Annabelle just misses Melody and is like playing around with her camcorder, realizing that both Samuel and Melody had this kiss here. So we now have Melody and Annabelle just kind of talking about things, and so we have it where Samuel is to make his way back up with a bottle of wine or champagne or something like that. So Melody's like, "Oh, can I get me some of that?" Because of course Melody has no booze. So we go on and have these three just kind of drinking and kind of chatting, and eventually Samuel does leave. So eventually Melody is to go on and is to, of course, hear this humming again. And she's like, "What the is that?" As she's going to her thing that once before she was hearing sounds from before. So Melody's like, "You know what? I can't take this. I gotta figure out what this is. I gotta figure this out." So Melody goes on and is to track down the sound. So she goes on, and there's a bunch of people just humming it out, and they are humming in front of this statue, and they're just like hmm. So we have it to where Dan is to consistently be thinking of this song for some odd reason, playing it on the piano, trying to figure out what the heck this song is, because it's haunting him beyond belief. Where we could go on and possibly say that maybe the reason why Dan is to be really just brought here is maybe because his musical choice. Not quite sure. Maybe that maybe he was to possibly have this song, of course, be some answer by the end of this show, or probably in the next episode because they answer everything within the next episode. So Melody is going on and is to find these people just humming it out, like they're just humming away. They're just like, yeah, and so because they're getting they're just like, yeah, like maybe they're praying, maybe they're humming. I don't know. It is what it is. So after that, after everybody leaves and Melody is in like the coat closet, Melody all of a sudden is to see both Samuel and Tara just going at it like wild animals. And so Melody is just like, well, okay, I guess our relationship is over. He's just like, he's going around, just going with all the ladies everywhere. So Melody is to go on and to get back to Annabelle and say that this place is effed up. And so Annabelle's like, well, hey, let's pull the ripcord. Let's just leave. And Melody's like, well, no, like, out of all this stuff, out of all this weird craziness, whatever, like, I'm just here to go and find Jules Bennett. Because Julie Bennett is to, of course, be Melody's biological mother. And so Melody's hoping that she can go on and find this mother somewhere in this building. You would have thought that really Jess would have asked, or Melody would have asked Melody would have asked Jess about this woman, if there's any name that seems familiar. Like, I know that when Melody is to ask, of course, Reyes about this, Reyes is to mention that there is to be uh, one mailbox that is just kind of filled to the brim with mail, and so like that might be Bennett's. And when uh, Melody is to go and try to see and kind of pull out some mail from this mailbox, we have Samuel kind of coming and be like, "Oh, you're trying to steal mail? That's a federal offense." And Melody's just like, "Well, no, like I just like I don't know. I was just so." Samuel's like, "Well, I'm not the male police. Like I'm a male, but not the police." So, oh, what a joke! So that's when, of course, Samuel is to ask Melody about the whole music thing and if she's interested in going to this play. And of course, we have Melody that says yes to all that. So we find out that Melody is trying to desperately go on and try to find her biological mother uh, out of this effed up building that she should really just walk away from. And so Annabelle's like, you know, okay, like, all right, like, we'll go and try to figure this out because if that's the only real reason why you're here, then, like, yeah, like, let's go and find this woman. Like, let's make it our just real agenda to just go on and do that instead of, like, smoke screening it as, like, just some, like, oh, I'm just going to make some video. I'm just going to interview people. No, you're just trying to find somebody. And that becomes obvious in this episode. So we also have Dane, and I know I'm kind of all over the place with this one. I'm not in the perfect pattern of the way of which that this episode is to drop down like it's hot. So Dan also is to go on and is to go into this cabinet that is to have a bunch of food there. Because we have Dan going on and telling Mark at some point that he would easily believe that Davenport probably has cameras stored all over this place because he's that much of a weirdo. And so Mark is just like, really? That's effed up? And Dan's like, well, I'm working for the guy and he's giving me a pretty big payout, so Dan goes on and is to go into this food cabinet and just go on and just break through this one wall, finding out all of a sudden that this wall is to lead to this stairwell. I'm like, wow, this feels original. Like, how many things have I just seen where there's a mystery thing where you have to go on and find this secret door somewhere or secret stairwell, or like this feels like going back to like Young Frankenstein, where we of course have Gene Wilder who pulls the candlestick and all of a sudden the bookcase moves and then he's like, put the candle back. Same old thing that we're going with here, except for this time he's breaking through this wall, walking down this stairwell to find out that this is just some church of sorts, because there is this like book and like this obvious church like seating arrangement being put here, and then all of a sudden Davenport is to come here with a big wrench, and he's like, well, hey kid, like, I could have possibly fired you for what you did here, for coming down here. Yeah. Dan says, like, dude, you're not going to fire me. Like, you need me. Like, you need me here. There's a reason why I am here. You chose me because my father, of course, is to be on those tapes. So there's some connection here between my father and these tapes somehow. And so you want to figure out what that is. So we go on and we have Davenport that's telling, of course, Dan here about him going to debate class. And he went on and was to choose Jesus as a debating point, and how I guess Davenport at some point was become this skeptic about there being that this guy is to go on and exist. So it seems that maybe Davenport was to go on and find some other kind of thing to worship, and probably ain't Jeebus. So so really Davenport is just telling Dan at this point, it's like, well, hey, like, if you want to keep doing these tapes and you want to figure out this answer, like, by golly, go on and do it. But if you want to, hey, if you want to stop here, then by all means. But like, I really want you to go and solve this mystery. And like Davenport has also mentioned to Dan, it's like, well, yeah, I don't know what are on those tapes. Yeah, I'm sure you don't, Davenport. I'm sure you don't. And so he's like, well, like, yeah, like, we're gonna like we're gonna have you try to figure this out. And so we have Dan, who just goes on and continues to watch the tapes, and he's continuing to do this. And I'm just waiting for there to be a moment where Dan is going to regret figuring out this mystery, figuring out this whole thing. I feel like this could possibly put Dan's life at danger at some point, because it feels like people's lives are starting to get in danger in this story. So, with that said, I think that may cover most of this here. Yeah, I feel like most of this covered. So tune in whatever the next time it is that I go and do more of this episode. Thank you, everybody, for going on and watching the first review. I really do appreciate it. We'll see how this story all plays out. It's an interesting mystery show, but like I'm just kind of like, I'm feeling a little like, I was like, ooh, this is interesting. But then in this episode, I'm like, this is like kind of just like a little bit just like not as jazz as I was hoping to be. So I was hoping there was some kind of unique approach to this. I was hoping there was some kind of like, ooh, like this is an interesting way to do a show. But then we just turn around and just, I could watch anything. Like, it could have this kind of thing in it. And like, I had gone on and looked at other, like, just photos of this thing, and I was thinking, like, well, is this kind of like an Eyes Wide Shut kind of thing with like the weird masks that they're going on and using at some point, and we'll figure out what the heck that is. And we'll also figure out what god that they are worshiping in this episode, because like, it has this kind of, because I know there's like people that have already gone on and done videos about this, where they kind of go on and explain they break down the whole season. And so, like, yeah, so already people have probably watched this whole thing in one fell swoop, one fell gulp, and just broke this whole thing down. But for me, I'm going to continue on doing this the same way that I've been kind of doing it, like every other day, and we'll keep going on and seeing what happens within the show. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Hopefully I covered everything. If not, in the next time I do this, like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, because there might be a rebuttal coming. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.